Hey friends, welcome back. Mike here, making my part 2 video. If you haven't seen my first video on why you should get your license, your private pilot license, look at the link below. But in this segment, I'm going to talk about why you should not even think about getting a private pilot license. And these are justifiable based on whoever's watching this, but based on my experience, these are the reasons why I would really think hard about it before I get a license or start my journey to get a license. Okay, number one, the costs. The costs and the affordability of getting a private pilot license for the average person can be enormous. Okay, now it depends on why you're getting your license. If you're getting it for to make it as a career choice, then I think the cost is worth it, because obviously you're gonna get a career, you're gonna get a job, and eventually hopefully pay off whatever it is that you spent getting your license. Okay, but just to give you an idea, that the average national cost to get in a sports license, I believe, is between $6,000 and $8,000. For a private pilot license, they tell you it's $8,000 to $10,000, but really it's more like double that. It's more like 15. Actually, I would say between 12 and 15, $16,000. For me, it cost me close to $30,000 to get my private pilot license. And depending on the school that you use, and also depending on you yourself, your time commitment, your learning curve, because everyone is going to learn and develop differently. So depending on how much you're able to commit in terms of your mental time, and also how fast you're able to learn, that's really going to have an effect on your costs. But I would budget at least 10 grand to get my private pilot license. Excuse me. But it's likely going to cost you more. Again, depend on where you are. Location obviously matters. Getting a pilot license in, say, Texas is going to be very different to getting a pilot license, say, in California or in New York, where the gas prices is pretty high. And that's one of the main costs of aviation: fuel, because you need fuel to fly. So that's a lot of your cost goes into gas and fuel. All right, so that's number one, the costs. I would consider it, if you don't have that kind of money sitting around, or you have to borrow it, so I would consider it really hard before I go for it. Number two is time commitment, and I touched a little bit on this on the first point. So if you haven't seen my video, I made a video a while ago on how much it cost me to get my license, and you can check out the link to that video below. So one thing that I realized in my journey was the time commitment. So there's the financial cost, but there's also time cost. If you have a full-time job like I did, or if you have, say you're a full-time student going to college or whatever have you, it's really going to take a lot from you to commit to flying. Now, for example, I was flying on average 2 to 4 times a week, and that was a toll. Like, it took a toll being able to commit that much time into it. Okay, so if you are thinking about getting a pilot's license, I would really think hard about how much time that I have available and how much time that I'm able to put into this. Now, for people who, say, for example, this is what they want to do, they don't have a job, or they live with mom or dad, then go for it. As a matter of fact, the younger you are, the better. If you're in your teens right now, it's the best time to become a pilot, because when you become older and you get a job and you have responsibilities, it's going to become harder. So right now, where you don't have much and you still live with mom and dad or whatever have you, you have enough time to commit to this. All right, so time commitment is a big factor. And time commitment also directly affects how much in the end is going to cost you in terms of money. Because, for example, say you you're only able to commit 1 day a week or 2 days a week, your flight training is probably going to be much longer than the average. I know people, actually I know one person who, when they trained for their pilot license back in the day, they were training every single day. And so again, it's also a matter of consistency. So flight training is not something where you come in, this week for a day or two, and then you take next week off, and then you try to come back. It doesn't work like that. If you do that, you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot. So it's something where you have to stay with it. If you take a break, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you because you kind of have to, when you come back, you're going to have to relearn things that you already learned. So it's better to stay with it and stay consistent. So time, that's a big factor in your costs, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3 is you are always at the mercy of Mother Nature, okay? So one thing I learned in my experience is, man, you have to exercise so much patience when you're learning to fly, because, and again, in my video, if you watch my video when I talked about the cost, I remember days where I would show up, early on time. I had already cleared my schedule to fly, and I would get there and I'm not able to fly. And it's because either it's raining or it's cloudy, just a tiny little cloud. As a VFR pilot, they can't really train you when the skies are not clear. So if you decide to have your training done at certain time of the year, for example, when I train in California, when I was training between May and June, worst time of the year to try to fly or learn how to fly an airplane, because a lot of clouds. That's the time of the year where storms comes in, mostly from the eastern part of the country, and then it kind of flows west. Okay, so June, and they call it June bloom or June gloom or something like that. It's a well-known time of the year in California. So depending on the time of the year that you're training, always consider weather. And even after you get your license, you're still at the mercy of Mother Nature. Now, you can go a step further and get an IFR certification. And with an IFR certification, you're able to fly in the clouds because you're an instrument pilot. But still, even with an IFR certification, there's still certain things you can't do. You still have to avoid thunderstorms. If there's thunderstorms all around you, no matter how much certification you have, you still cannot fly. So you're always at the mercy of Mother Nature, and especially when you're just starting. For more experienced pilots, they know their way around, or they have enough experience where they can fly in certain conditions. But as a new pilot or as a pilot in training, you're gonna have to exercise so much patience whenever the weather doesn't allow you to fly. So that is another thing I would consider before I jump the broom. So if you're thinking about getting a pilot's license, always know that Mother Nature is the absolute God. If she decides today I'm just gonna rain on you, or today I'm gonna be partly cloudy, or today I'm gonna have thunderstorms all around you, you're not gonna be able to fly. So Mother Nature, number 3. Number 4 is the requirement in terms of efforts and mental commitment. So one thing that I learned becoming a pilot is that it can be very tasking. Okay, so the simplest way I can explain this, and it's tasking in the sense that, like, right now I'm sitting in a car. Okay, most people learn how to drive in their teens, maybe at 16 or 17. So learning how to drive, for example, was fairly easy, although we take it for granted, but it's fairly easy to learn how to drive, especially if it's an automatic car. If you're driving an automatic, it's a matter of learning how to use your foot, put in the right gear, and pay attention, obviously. So think about learning how to drive a car and then multiply it I would go as far as multiplied by 10. That's how much task and how much effort and alert you have to be to fly an airplane safely. Okay, so unlike flying an airplane, unlike driving a car, when you get in your car, you just drive. You don't have to talk to anybody. You really don't have to do anything. For example, if you're cruising on the highway, all that's working really is your foot, your right foot, and maybe your hands, and that's it. And your mental state, you just have to be alert and don't hit anybody. Whereas when you're flying an airplane, okay, first of all, unlike a car, there's something called pre-flight, and a lot of people should do this to their cars too, by the way. You should kind of go around your car before you get in, inspect it and make sure it's good to drive, but 99.9% don't do that. Even I don't even do that. If I'm going somewhere, I just get in the car, start the engines, and I'm out. Okay? So, but in an airplane, if you're going to fly, you got to do a pre-flight first, properly inspect that airplane and make sure it's in airworthy condition and you can go up and fly. Because, again, my old saying is, it's better to be on the ground and wish you were up there than to be up there and wish you were on the ground. Depending on your mission for that particular flight will require a certain amount of work. But in general, it really takes a lot more effort to fly an airplane than, say, to drive a car, because you're doing so many things. You're checking your engine, you're checking your fuel flow, you constantly, your hands is on your power line, reducing power. Once you get to cruise, for example, you don't have to do all that, but still, again, if you're flying in a busy airspace, you still got to do some work. So that's what I mean by it can be very tasking. And again, just make sure you do your pre-flight properly and make sure you fly safe always. So that's number 4. Now, last but not the least, safety, which I touched on a little bit. The number one factor is safety. When it comes to aviation, you always have to exercise caution. You always have to exercise patience. You always have to exercise, don't be too much in a hurry. I watch fatality videos often because I like to learn from accidents or airplane crashes and things like that. And some of the stuff that I've seen are, a pilot being in a hurry sometimes, or sometimes they didn't exercise enough caution or whatever have you. But as a safe pilot, you always want to exercise caution. Don't be too much in a hurry. If you save, and a lot of crashes happen coming into land. That's what they call the deadly zone or whatever have you. So a lot of pilots crash the airplane when they're coming into land for different reasons. Sometimes it could be the weather, wind shear, things like that. But for the most part, a lot also has to do with maybe there's traffic in the way or something, and you pull up too fast or too quickly, or basically you react too quickly and then you stall the airplane. So always exercise caution, especially when you're coming into land, and be patient. If you're coming in and something doesn't look right either on the ground, just go around. If you're too high, too low, put that power in, pitch up, and go around. Don't try to force the airplane down. Again, it's not a car where you can just pull up and correct yourself. When you're up there, as long as you're in the air, you always have to exercise patience and cautions. If something is not as you want it, just go around. It's better to spend some time going around, even if you've been in the airplane for 2-3 hours. Go around and save your own life and save the life of other people. Okay, so that's what I would say. Safety. Even right now, for me, for example, my wife thinks I drive like a grandpa. And I remember having a conversation with her one day and I said to her, listen, you think I drive like a grandpa, but would you prefer that I drive like a maniac if I'm flying an airplane? or if I'm on a motorcycle, where those two things you have to exercise extreme caution. You have to be defensive always. I use the same mental note when I'm flying an airplane. I mean, when I'm riding a motorcycle to when I'm flying an airplane. On a bike, you have to always be defensive. You can't always assume that everybody's out there to get you. Always assume that everybody out there is an idiot and somebody's gonna do something to get in your path or whatever. That's literally the paranoid mental state that I ride in whenever I'm on a motorcycle. The same thing when I'm up there in the sky. If I'm flying, I'm assuming that everybody that's around me are stupid and they're gonna do something stupid. So I'm flying very defensively. And just to that point, if you don't know, right now most accidents, and most specifically civil aviation accidents, because the accident rate in the commercial industry has gone down a lot compared to civil aviation. Most accidents happen during broad daylight, where it's sunny and shiny, where you can see things, and I feel like that could give someone a false sense of safety. If you're flying in a nice, beautiful day, you think everything is okay, but a lot of mid-air collisions happen during broad daylight, where you would think like, wow, why didn't that person see that? So, and again, it's that false sense of safety that you people get if they're flying in a nice visible day. But again, if you fly and you think everybody's out there to get you, you constantly look right, left, circle around you, make sure that your path is clear, because you have some pilots who don't talk on the radio. I've experienced that where I've been to a smaller airport or a Class G airport, and you have pilots who are supposed to talk to the radio and they don't. And that's another thing. Whenever you're flying, try to have zero distractions, because sometimes it takes this much. Just like in a car, literally 1 second of looking down can let you hit somebody when you're driving a car. The same thing in an airplane. 1 second of not looking around or whatever can be very costly. So always exercise caution and patience and alertness. All right? And don't be too much in a hurry. If the weather doesn't look good, even if it's a tiny bit cloudy or above your skill level, I would stay down. Again, you're better off being down, wishing you were up there, than being up there and wishing you were down. So always think about that. Another thing, last thing I would say when it comes to safety is, as a pilot, whether beginner or more experienced pilot, set your own limits. You know, the FAA has limits on when and how to fly in different airspaces, but personally, I set my own limits. For example, for a VFR in Class D or whatever, say, is 3 statute miles visibility, meaning if and 3 statute miles visibility is like this tiny. Okay, to me personally, it's this tiny where you can barely see things, but the FAA tells you it's okay. If you have the skill level to be up there legally, you can be up there with 3 statute miles visibility. But for me, if it's not at least 5 or 6, I'm not getting up there. If I can barely see what's around me, or there's too many clouds around me, I'm not getting up there. So that's what I say to exercise even more safety, is always set your own limits. You as a pilot know your skill level, and I would say always go even below that, knowing situations you can get into and that you can control. If you've never flown in the clouds before, or you've never flown in the rain before, if you see just tiny clouds coming in, don't do it. And always do your homework. Always flight plan. Don't get in an airplane without planning your flight ahead of time. And one thing they always tell you in your training is, as a pilot, you always have to be ahead of the airplane. Don't let the airplane be ahead of you. If that airplane is going to be, say, 1,000 feet in the next 2 minutes, mentally you should be at that 1,000 feet before that airplane gets there, and that's what makes a safe pilot. And you know, you've probably seen my video in the past where I talk about a Cirrus crash that happened in Houston. This was probably last year. God rest their souls, the people who died in that crash. But you know, when I think of the Cirrus brand, I always talk about Cirrus because I actually love the brand as a company. But Cirrus, you know, as you know, is well known for a lot of crashes. And I think one thing that plays a factor in the crashes are you have less experienced pilots that are flying this high performance airplane. All the Cirrus airplanes are considered high performance because the engines are at least 200 horsepower. Okay, so when you're flying this fast machine, you always have to be ahead of that. So for example, most people train in like Cessna 150, 172. I train in a Diamond DA40 where the cruise speed is like 110 or 120 miles per hour. I mean 110 or 120 knots, nautical miles per hour. So when I think of my training and my skill level is I'm only experienced with being able to stay ahead of an airplane that's that fast. Now, if I were to jump in from an airplane that goes 120 knots cruise speed to an airplane that goes 200 knots cruise speed, that's 80 knots difference. That's the difference of going 100 miles per hour more. Literally, you're going up to 100 miles per hour more. So, and mentally, you have to be able to stay up and keep up with that kind of speed. So if you're flying an airplane that's that fast, again, before that airplane gets to 1,000 feet in 2 minutes, you have to get to that 1,000 feet mentally a minute ahead of the airplane. So that's the idea of caution and, you know, staying ahead of your airplane. All right, so I've probably talked a lot about safety, but it's the number one factor when it comes to getting your pilot's license or becoming a pilot. All right, so that's something I would think really hard about. And once you do become a pilot, it's something I will practice every single time that I get into the airplane. I hope you guys enjoy this segment of my chit chat. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so. And leave your comments. Let me know your experience. I know there's some pilots who watch my channel, so I'm very curious to know your experience, you know, being either a beginner or more experienced pilot. Let me know and leave, you know, by leaving your comments below. Okay, people, until the next video, I will catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.